They say you never forget the moment your life changes forever. For me, that moment happened in a boardroom so luxurious that the marble table probably cost more than most people's houses. The chandelier above us was imported from Italy. The leather chairs were custom-made. Everything in that room screamed wealth, power, and prestige. And there I sat, surrounded by all of it, watching my father-in-law's cold eyes tear apart everything I'd built. Richard Ashford, billionaire CEO, self-made empire builder. The man whose daughter I'd married 3 years ago. The man who'd hired me into his company with a handshake and a smile. And now, the man who was destroying my career with the same casual indifference he used to order his morning coffee. "Your services are no longer required," he said, just like that. No warning, no explanation that made any real sense, just those 6 words that felt like a knife sliding between my ribs. I remember looking around that boardroom. 12 members of the executive team were there. Some looked away. Some stared at their phones. A few had the decency to look uncomfortable, but nobody spoke up. Nobody questioned it, because when a billionaire decides something, people fall in line. What Richard didn't expect, what nobody in that room expected, was what happened next. My team lead, Marcus, stood up. He'd been with the company for 8 years. "If she goes, I go," he said simply. Richard's eyebrows raised slightly, just slightly. He wasn't used to being challenged. Then Jennifer from analytics stood, then David, then Patricia. One by one, 22 people walked out of their offices that day, 22 colleagues who'd become more than just coworkers. They became the army I didn't know I had. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You need to understand how I got here. You need to know the whole story, because this isn't just about a firing. This is about betrayal, family, greed, and what happens when someone pushes you too far. Before we go any further, I need you to do something for me. Smash that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, because this story gets wild, and you're going to want to be part of this community when I reveal what I did next. Let me take you back to where it all began. 4 years ago, when I was just another ambitious professional trying to make my mark, with no idea I was about to marry into a family that would first embrace me, then try to destroy me. 4 years ago, I was nobody special. At least, not in the way society measures these things. I didn't come from money. I didn't have connections. What I had was a master's degree in business strategy, student loans that made me nauseous, and a stubborn refusal to settle for mediocrity. I was working at a mid-sized consulting firm, pulling 60-hour weeks, living in a studio apartment where I could touch both walls if I stretched out my arms. My life was coffee, spreadsheets, presentations, and dreams of something bigger. That's when I met Daniel Ashford. It wasn't some fairy tale meeting. We literally collided at a coffee shop. He was on his phone, not watching where he was going. I was carrying 3 cups of coffee for my team, running late for a meeting. The collision sent one of those cups straight onto his expensive suit. I was horrified. I started apologizing immediately, grabbing napkins, making it worse. He just laughed. That's what I remember most about that first moment. He laughed like it was the funniest thing that had happened to him all week. "It's just a suit," he said. "I have others." I didn't know who he was then. Didn't know his last name was attached to a billion-dollar empire. He was just this guy with kind eyes and an easy smile, helping me pick up coffee cup lids while other customers stepped around us. He asked for my number to send me the dry cleaning bill. Instead, he used it to ask me to dinner. Our first date lasted 6 hours. We talked about everything. He told me about growing up with a father who measured success in quarterly earnings. I told him about growing up with a single mom who measured success in whether we could keep the electricity on. He seemed fascinated by my world, by the fact that I'd built everything from scratch. "You're real," he said that night. "Everyone I meet wants something or is pretending to be someone they're not. You're just real." I fell for him. How could I not? Daniel was different when it was just the two of us. Thoughtful. Funny. He talked about wanting to make a difference, about using his family's resources for good. He had dreams that went beyond board meetings and profit margins. We dated for 8 months before he took me to meet his family. I'll never forget pulling up to the Ashford estate. I'd seen big houses before, but this was different. This was old money, new money, and every kind of money in between, all rolled into one sprawling monument to wealth. The driveway was longer than the street I grew up on. Richard Ashford answered the door himself. That surprised me. I'd expected staff, servants, some kind of buffer. But there he was, Daniel's father, standing in the doorway in casual slacks and a polo shirt that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "You must be the girl who ruined Daniel's Armani," he said, and for a second I couldn't tell if he was joking or testing me. Then he smiled, extended his hand. "I'm Richard, come in, I've heard quite a bit about you." Dinner that night was an interview disguised as a family meal. Daniel's mother, Catherine, was polite but distant, the kind of woman who'd perfected the art of saying nothing while communicating everything. His sister, Victoria, barely looked up from her phone. But Richard engaged me directly, asked about my work, my background, my goals. I answered honestly, because I'd never learned how to be anything else. I told him about my strategies for market analysis, about a proposal I'd written that had saved my company a major client. I watched his eyes sharpen with interest. This was a man who respected competence, who valued intelligence. I didn't know it then, but I was auditioning for more than the role of girlfriend. 3 months later, Daniel proposed. It was simple, private, just the two of us on a beach at sunset. No photographers, no spectacle. That was Daniel's way. He knew I'd hate something elaborate. I said yes, because I loved him, because he saw me as an equal, not an accessory, because when I was with him, I felt like I'd found my partner in every sense of the word. We got married in a ceremony that his mother planned and I barely recognized. It was beautiful, expensive, and absolutely not what I would have chosen. But I told myself it didn't matter. The marriage was what mattered. Daniel was what mattered. On our honeymoon, while we were lying on a beach in the Maldives, Daniel's phone rang. It was his father. "I have a proposition for your wife," Richard said. Daniel put it on speaker. Richard wanted me to join Ashford Enterprises. He'd been impressed by my strategic thinking, by my work ethic. He had a position opening up in their development division. Good salary, better benefits, and the chance to work on projects with real impact. "I hire based on merit," Richard told me. "You've got the skills we need. The fact that you're family now is just a bonus. What do you say?" I hesitated. I knew how it would look. The new daughter-in-law given a cushy job in the family business. I'd worked too hard to have people think I was riding coattails. "I'll need to earn it," I said. "No special treatment. I want to be evaluated like anyone else." Richard laughed, actually laughed. "You're going to fit in just fine," he said. Daniel squeezed my hand. He looked proud, happy. "You don't have to if you don't want to," he whispered. But I did want to. This was the opportunity I'd been working toward my entire career. A chance to work at the highest level, to prove myself on the biggest stage. The fact that it came through marriage felt like a complication, but not a deal breaker. "I'll do it," I told Richard. "When do I start?" "After the honeymoon," he said. "Enjoy your time. Work will be waiting when you get back." I started 6 weeks later. They gave me an office with a view, a team of 12 people, and a project portfolio that would have intimidated someone with less confidence. I threw myself into it completely. Within 3 months, I'd streamlined 2 major processes, identified cost savings of nearly $3 million, and built relationships across every department. I worked harder than anyone, arrived earlier, stayed later. I was determined to prove I deserved to be there. And I was good, really good. The numbers showed it. The results spoke for themselves. Richard noticed. He started pulling me into bigger meetings, asking my opinion on strategic decisions. Other executives began seeking my input. I wasn't just Daniel's wife anymore. I was becoming a valued member of the team. At home, Daniel and I were happy. We had our own place, a beautiful penthouse that his parents had given us as a wedding gift. We'd host dinners, travel on weekends, build the life we wanted. He was working on philanthropic projects, using the family foundation to fund education initiatives. I was climbing the corporate ladder. Everything seemed perfect. We seemed perfect. I didn't see the cracks forming, didn't notice the small shifts, the subtle changes. I was too busy proving myself, too focused on success. That was my first mistake. They don't tell you about the weight of living in a golden cage. From the outside, it looks like paradise. From the inside, you start to realize that every beautiful thing comes with strings attached. My first year at Ashford Enterprises was everything I'd hoped for professionally. I led successful projects. I earned respect from colleagues who initially saw me as just the boss's daughter-in-law. I proved myself with results that nobody could dismiss or diminish. But slowly, subtly, other things began to change. It started with small comments at family dinners. Catherine, Daniel's mother, would mention charity events I should attend, causes I should support, people I should befriend, not suggestions. Instructions disguised as suggestions. "The Williams Foundation Gala is next month," she'd say over Sunday brunch. "I've already RSVP'd for you and Daniel. Miranda Williams is someone you need to know." I didn't want to go to galas. I wanted to work on the merger proposal that was due, but I went, because that's what family did. Victoria, Daniel's sister, started making comments about my clothes, my hair, the way I presented myself. "You're representing the family now," she said once, looking at my department store dress with barely concealed disdain. "Maybe it's time to invest in your image." I'd never cared much about designer labels. I cared about competence, about substance. But suddenly, my wardrobe was being scrutinized. My appearance was being evaluated. I was being molded into something more acceptable, more appropriate for an Ashford. Daniel noticed my frustration. "Just ignore them," he'd say. "You know how they are, it doesn't matter." But it did matter, because these weren't just comments. They were a constant reminder that I'd never be quite enough, never be exactly what they wanted. At work, Richard continued to praise my contributions. He'd bring me into high-level strategy sessions, introduce me to major clients, give me visibility that others had spent years earning. I appreciated the opportunities, but I also started to notice something unsettling. He'd take credit for my ideas in meetings. Small things at first. An insight I'd shared privately would become his recommendation publicly. A strategy I'd developed would be presented as his directive. When I'd mention it, he'd smile that charming smile. "We're family," he'd say. "What's yours is mine, what's mine is yours. That's how this works." But it didn't feel reciprocal. It felt like erasure. My colleagues started treating me differently too. Some with resentment, assuming I had advantages they didn't. Others with excessive deference, afraid that complaining to me would get back to Richard. The genuine professional relationships I'd tried so hard to build became complicated by family dynamics I couldn't escape. I tried talking to Daniel about it. We'd be lying in bed at night, and I'd tell him how isolated I felt. How I was succeeding at work but losing myself in the process. How his family was suffocating me with their expectations. He'd hold me and make promises. "We'll set boundaries," he'd say. "We'll do better." But nothing changed, because Daniel, for all his kindness, had grown up in this world. He'd learned to navigate it by going along, by not making waves. Confronting his family, truly standing up to them, wasn't in his nature. I threw myself deeper into work. If I couldn't control the family dynamics, at least I could control my professional success. I took on more projects, delivered bigger results, made myself indispensable. In my second year, I led a development project that brought in $42 million in new revenue. $42 million. It was the most successful initiative the division had seen in 5 years. I'd worked 18-hour days for months. I'd coordinated with teams across 3 countries. I'd negotiated deals that others said were impossible. The board recognition went to Richard. "Under Richard Ashford's visionary leadership," the press release read, my name was mentioned in the 3rd paragraph as part of the dedicated team. I was furious. I'd earned that success. I'd bled for it. When I confronted Richard privately, he looked genuinely confused by my anger. "You're thinking too small," he said, leaning back in his executive chair. Your name on one project means nothing in the long term, but being part of the Ashford legacy, building this company's reputation, that's what will serve your career. Trust me, I'm thinking of your future. My future or yours? I asked. His eyes went cold, just for a second, then the warmth returned. Careful, he said softly. Ambition is admirable, ingratitude is not. That was the first time I felt genuine fear in his presence. Not of physical harm, but of something more insidious. The fear that this man, who controlled so much of my life, could take it all away if I displeased him. I apologized, hated myself for it, but I apologized. At home that night, I told Daniel what had happened. I waited for him to be outraged on my behalf, to defend me, to acknowledge that his father had crossed a line. Instead, he sighed. Dad's old school, he said. He doesn't understand why individual recognition matters so much to your generation. Can't you just let it go? You know what you accomplished. Isn't that enough? No, I said, it's not. We had our first real fight that night. Voices raised, doors slammed. All the resentment I'd been swallowing for 2 years came pouring out. I told him I felt invisible, that his family was consuming me, that I was losing my identity trying to fit into a world that would never fully accept me. Daniel didn't know what to do with my anger. He'd grown up in a family where conflicts were handled with cold silence or passive aggression, never honest confrontation. He looked at me like I was speaking a language he didn't understand. I love you, he said finally. Isn't that what matters? We love each other. The rest is just noise. But the rest wasn't noise. The rest was my life, my career, my sense of self. Things between us became strained. We were still affectionate in public, still played the happy couple at family events. But in private, a distance grew. We talked less, touched less. We became roommates who occasionally remembered they were supposed to be lovers. I buried myself in work even more. It was the only place I felt like myself, even with all its complications. Then, about 6 months ago, something shifted at the company. Richard started pulling me out of meetings I'd normally attend. Projects I'd been leading were reassigned without explanation. When I asked why, I was told it was about restructuring and optimizing team dynamics. My assistant, Jennifer, mentioned that she'd heard rumors. Whispers that some of the executives felt I had too much influence, that I was being groomed for a position that others deserved more. They're saying you only got here because of your marriage, Jennifer told me quietly. I don't believe it. I've seen your work, but people are talking. I knew those rumors hadn't started on their own. Someone was planting them. Someone wanted to undermine my credibility. I started noticing Richard in conversations with other executives, conversations that would stop when I approached. I saw the looks, the closed-door meetings I wasn't invited to. Something was being planned. I could feel it. At home, Daniel became more withdrawn. He spent more time at his parents' house, more time away from me. When I'd ask what was wrong, he'd insist nothing was wrong, but I knew better. 3 months ago, I overheard a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. I'd returned to the office late to grab a file I'd forgotten. Richard's office light was on. The door was slightly open. I heard voices. She's become a problem, Richard was saying. Too independent, too vocal. She's forgetting her place. She's my wife. That was Daniel's voice, quiet, uncertain. She's an employee who happens to be married to my son, Richard corrected. And employees who don't align with company values don't last, family or not. I didn't wait to hear more. I left quietly, my heart pounding, my mind racing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay next to Daniel, wondering if he'd defend me or if he'd already chosen his father's side, wondering how much longer I had before whatever was coming finally arrived. I started documenting everything, every project I'd led, every result I'd delivered, every email, every file, every piece of evidence that proved my value. I didn't know what I was preparing for, but I knew I needed to be ready. 2 months ago, the tension became unbearable. Richard stopped speaking to me unless absolutely necessary. Daniel started sleeping in the guest room, claiming he had insomnia and didn't want to disturb me. I was being iced out of my own life. Then, 3 weeks ago, I received a meeting invitation. Executive review session, it was called. Mandatory attendance. Location, the luxury boardroom on the executive floor. Somehow I knew this was it. The night before that meeting, I barely slept. I rehearsed arguments in my head, prepared defenses, gathered my documentation. I thought if I could just present the facts, show the undeniable proof of my contributions, reason would prevail. I still believed, naively, that truth mattered, that merit mattered, that family meant something. I had no idea how wrong I was. The morning of the meeting, I woke up at 5. Daniel's side of the bed was empty. It had been empty for weeks, but that morning it felt like a sign. I was already alone in this fight. I dressed carefully, a navy suit that meant business, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back. I wanted to look professional, competent, unshakable, even though inside I was terrified. I arrived at the office an hour early. The building was quiet, just security and the cleaning crew finishing their rounds. I sat in my office and reviewed everything one more time. My project outcomes, my revenue contributions, the testimonials from clients, the metrics that proved, beyond any doubt, that I'd earned my place. My hands were shaking. I remember that detail so clearly. My hands trembling as I organized papers I'd probably never get the chance to present. Jennifer arrived at 7:30. She took one look at me and closed the office door behind her. "Whatever happens in there today," she said, "you need to know that the team is behind you, all of us. We've seen the Whisper campaign. We know what's been happening, and it's garbage." I felt tears threatening and blinked them back. "Thank you," I managed. "Don't thank me," she said. "Just don't let them erase what you've built. Don't let them rewrite history." Other team members stopped by throughout the morning. Marcus brought me coffee. David gave me a thumbs up through the glass wall. Patricia sent an email with the subject line, "You've got this," and nothing else in the body. These people had become more than colleagues. We'd worked late nights together, celebrated wins together, problem-solved impossible challenges together. They knew my worth, even if the executive floor had forgotten. At 10 o'clock, my phone pinged with a reminder. Executive review session, 15 minutes. I gathered my materials, squared my shoulders, and walked to the elevator. The ride up 3 floors felt like an eternity. I watched the numbers change, each one bringing me closer to whatever was waiting. The executive floor was different from the rest of the building. Quieter, more opulent, thick carpets that absorbed sound, art on the walls that cost more than annual salaries. This was where the real power lived. Richard's assistant, a severe woman named Margaret, directed me to the luxury boardroom. "They're waiting for you," she said without warmth. I walked in, and the first thing I noticed was the setup. This wasn't a review. This was a tribunal. Richard sat at the head of the table, exactly where you'd expect a king to sit. On his right was the CFO, Thomas Sterling. On his left, the head of HR, a woman named Diane Mercer, who I'd always found cold and calculating. Scattered around the table were other executives, people I'd worked with, people I'd delivered results for. And there, in the back corner, standing rather than sitting, was Daniel. My husband wouldn't even look at me. "Sit down," Richard said, gesturing to a chair that had been placed opposite him. Isolated, like a defendant facing a judge. I sat, placed my folder of documentation on the table in front of me, kept my spine straight. "I'm sure you're wondering why we've called this meeting," Richard began, his voice carrying that smooth authority he'd perfected over decades of commanding rooms. "I assumed it was a performance review," I said, keeping my voice steady. Thomas Sterling made a sound that might have been a laugh. "In a manner of speaking," he said. Diane opened a folder in front of her. "We've been conducting an internal assessment of team dynamics and organizational efficiency," she said in that HR voice that manages to be both professional and threatening. "Several concerns have been raised." "Concerns about what?" I asked. "About your position here," Richard said bluntly. About whether it's beneficial for the company to continue your employment. There it was, the real agenda finally spoken aloud. I'd like to address those concerns, I said, reaching for my folder. I have comprehensive documentation of my projects, outcomes, and contributions over the past 3 years. That won't be necessary, Richard interrupted. This isn't about your project work. I froze. Then what is it about? Company culture, Diane said. Team cohesion, appropriate professional boundaries. These were the kind of vague accusations you couldn't defend against because they meant nothing and everything. I'm not sure I understand, I said. Can you be specific? Richard leaned forward. You've created divisions within the company, made people feel they need to choose sides, used your personal relationship to my family to gain advantages, and then complained when those advantages came with expectations. Each word was carefully chosen. Each accusation designed to be just true enough to have a kernel of justification while completely misrepresenting reality. That's not accurate, I said, fighting to keep my voice level. I've worked harder than anyone to prove I earned my position. I've delivered exceptional results. If there are specific incidents you're referring to, I deserve to know what they are. You've become entitled, Thomas said, demanding recognition, questioning leadership decisions, creating discord. They were describing assertiveness as entitlement, confidence as arrogance. The same qualities that would be called leadership in a man were being weaponized against me. I looked around the table, meeting eyes. Some looked away. Others stared back with expressions I couldn't read. Is anyone going to tell me what I actually did wrong? I asked. Or is this just about putting me back in my place? The room went silent. I'd said the quiet part loud, and nobody knew how to respond. Finally, Richard spoke. His voice was colder than I'd ever heard it. Your services are no longer required at Ashford Enterprises, effective immediately. You'll receive 4 weeks severance pay. Margaret will escort you to collect your personal belongings. Your access will be terminated within the hour. Just like that, 3 years of work dismissed in 3 sentences. You can't be serious, I said, even though I could see he was completely serious. I'm absolutely serious, Richard replied. This is a business decision. Personal feelings aside, it's what's best for the company. Personal feelings? I repeated, my voice rising despite my best efforts. I'm married to your son, I'm family, and you're firing me in front of a boardroom full of executives like I'm some random employee who didn't work out. You are an employee who didn't work out, he said simply. The family connection is irrelevant. I turned to Daniel, finally looked at my husband, who'd been silent through this entire assassination of my career and character. Say something, I demanded. You're going to stand there and let this happen. Daniel's face was pale, his jaw was tight. For a moment I thought he might actually find his spine, might actually defend me. It's Dad's company, he said quietly, his decision. Those 4 words broke something in me, not just my heart, but my entire understanding of who this man was, who I'd thought he was. Coward, I whispered. His eyes flashed with hurt, but he didn't argue, because we both knew it was true. I stood up, gathering what was left of my dignity. I want everything in writing, I said to Diane. The reasons for termination, the severance terms, all of it documented. Of course, she said smoothly. HR will have everything prepared by end of day. I looked at Richard one last time. This man who'd welcomed me into his family with smiles and opportunities, only to destroy me the moment I became inconvenient. You're making a mistake, I said. I don't make mistakes, he replied. I turned and walked toward the door, my folder of useless documentation still in my hand. All that preparation, all that evidence. It didn't matter. This was never about facts. It was about power, and I had none. As I reached for the door handle, I heard Richard's voice behind me. One more thing, he said. I expect this to remain confidential. No dramatics, no making scenes. You'll leave quietly, professionally. Anything else would be unwise. The threat was clear. He controlled the narrative. He controlled the industry connections. He could make sure I never worked anywhere that mattered if I caused problems. I didn't respond, just opened the door and walked out, my heels clicking on the expensive marble floor. Margaret was waiting to escort me, like I was a criminal who might steal office supplies on my way out. The elevator ride down felt different than the ride up, heavier, darker. I was descending back to the floor where my team worked, but I was no longer one of them. I was already gone. The walk from the elevator to my office felt like a funeral march. Margaret followed 3 steps behind me, silent and official. A few people glanced up as we passed, then quickly looked away. News travels fast in corporate environments. They probably already knew. My office looked exactly as I'd left it 45 minutes earlier. Coffee cup still on the desk, photos on the credenza. The plant that Jennifer had given me for my work anniversary. Everything normal, except nothing would ever be normal again. "You have 15 minutes to collect personal items," Margaret said from the doorway. "Company property stays." I nodded, not trusting my voice yet. I grabbed a box from the supply closet and started the humiliating process of packing up 3 years of my professional life. Pictures first. Me and Daniel on our wedding day, both of us smiling like we believed in forever. I almost left it, then decided that woman in the photo deserved better than to be abandoned in an office that no longer wanted her. Into the box it went. Awards that suddenly meant nothing. A framed patent from a process innovation I'd developed. Personal books. The good pens I'd brought from home because the company ones were terrible. My hands were operating on autopilot while my mind raced. What would I tell people? How would I explain this? The daughter-in-law fired from the family business. Everyone would assume I'd screwed up, been incompetent, proven all the nepotism critics right. Richard had won completely. He'd gotten rid of the problem, and I'd be the one who looked bad. I was placing the last items in the box when I heard a knock. Jennifer stood in the doorway, and the look on her face told me she knew. "Is it true?" she asked. I nodded. "What happened?" "I got fired," I said, my voice hollow. "Effective immediately. Corporates speak about culture and fit. The real reason is I stopped being useful and started being inconvenient." Jennifer's face went from shock to anger. "That's insane. You're the best strategist this division has. The $42 million project alone should make you untouchable." "Nothing makes you untouchable when you're married to the boss's son, and the marriage isn't enough to protect you anymore," I said. "Time's up," Margaret announced. "We need to proceed to security." Security, like I was a threat, like I might sabotage something on my way out. I picked up my box. It was surprisingly light. 3 years reduced to a few pounds of personal items. Jennifer stepped aside to let me pass, then followed us. "I'm walking her out," she told Margaret. It wasn't a request. We made it maybe 20 feet before Marcus appeared. He'd clearly been waiting. "They really did it," he said, looking at the box in my arms. "They really did," I confirmed. "This is wrong," he said. "Everyone knows this is wrong." Other team members started emerging from their offices. David, Patricia, Sarah from development, Alex from analytics. One by one, they filed into the hallway, watching this parade. I wanted to tell them to go back to work, to not risk their positions for me, but I couldn't speak. The lump in my throat was too big. We reached the main office area. And more people had gathered. Word had spread. At least 30 employees were standing in the open workspace, watching. The energy felt strange, tense, like everyone was waiting for something to happen but didn't know what. I kept walking toward the exit, Margaret still following, Jennifer still at my side. Then Marcus did something I'll never forget. He walked past me, straight to his office, and emerged 30 seconds later with his own box. He'd grabbed his personal photo, his favorite mug, his jacket. "What are you doing?" I asked. "If she goes, I go," he said loudly, clearly, so everyone could hear. Margaret stopped walking. "Mr. Chen, don't be rash, you're valued." "I'm done," Marcus said. 8 years I've been here. I've watched politics trump merit over and over. I stayed because I believed we could make a difference. But if this is how we treat our best people, I don't want to be part of it. The room went silent. This was career suicide. Marcus was walking away from a 6-figure salary, stock options, everything he'd built. Then Jennifer moved, walked to her desk, started putting things in her bag. "Jennifer, what are you doing?" I asked. "What I should have done months ago," she said. "I'm out." "No," I said. "You can't. You have student loans. You need this job." She looked at me with fierce determination. "I need to be able to look at myself in the mirror more than I need this job. They want to fire the person who taught me what real leadership looks like. They can lose me too." David was next, then Patricia, then people I barely knew from other departments. One by one, employees started gathering their things. It was a rebellion, a spontaneous, beautiful, terrifying rebellion. Margaret was on her phone, frantically calling someone, probably Richard, probably HR, nobody cared. Within 20 minutes, 22 people stood in that office with boxes, bags, and backpacks full of their personal belongings. 22 colleagues who decided that their integrity mattered more than their paychecks. I was crying. I couldn't help it. These people were sacrificing so much. "You don't have to do this," I said to the group. "Please, I don't want you to lose everything because of me." "This isn't because of you," Marcus said. "This is because of them. Because we're tired of watching good people get crushed by politics and power games. Because sometimes you have to take a stand." Security had arrived. 3 guards who looked extremely uncomfortable with whatever they'd been told to do. "We need everyone to leave the premises," one of them said. "Now." "We're leaving," Marcus replied. "All of us together." And that's exactly what we did. 23 people walked out of Ashford Enterprises that day in a single-file line, through the lobby, past the reception desk, out the massive front doors into the sunlight. Employees from other floors lined the windows, watching. Some were filming on their phones. This would be all over corporate social media within hours. We gathered on the sidewalk outside, this random group of rebels who'd just blown up our careers. "What now?" someone asked. Nobody had an answer. We'd acted on principle, on emotion, on solidarity, but none of us had a plan for what came next. My phone was ringing. I pulled it out, Daniel's name on the screen. I declined the call. It rang again immediately. This time it was Richard. I declined that too. A text came through from Daniel. "We need to talk. Come home." Home, the penthouse his parents had given us. The golden cage I'd been living in for 3 years. I texted back, "I'll be there in an hour." I looked at the 22 people who'd walked out with me. These brave, probably foolish, absolutely incredible people. "Thank you," I said. "I don't know how to thank you enough for what you just did. Buy us drinks when you're a billionaire CEO of your own company and putting Ashford out of business," Patricia said with a grim smile. It was meant as a joke, a way to cut the tension. But something clicked in my mind, a spark of an idea, a possibility I hadn't considered because I'd been too busy being devastated. 22 talented people, no non-compete clauses because we'd all been fired, not voluntarily resigned. Years of combined experience and industry knowledge, and a bone-deep motivation to prove we were worth more than Richard Ashford believed. "What if we did exactly that?" I said quietly. "Did what?" Jennifer asked. "Started our own company, took everything we know and built something better, showed them exactly what they lost." The group went quiet. It was insane. It was impossible. It was exactly the kind of crazy idea that just might work. Marcus started laughing. "You're serious?" "Completely serious," I said, and I was. For the first time since walking into that boardroom, I felt something other than defeat. I felt angry, determined, ready to fight. "I'm in," Jennifer said immediately. "Me too," said David. One by one, voices around the circle agreed. Not everyone. A few people shook their heads, wished us luck, and left to start job hunting. I didn't blame them. This was a huge risk. But 18 people stayed. 18 people willing to bet on an impossible dream. We exchanged contact information, promised to meet in 2 days to actually plan instead of just react. Then we dispersed, heading to whatever came next. I took an Uber to the penthouse, watched the city pass by the window. I'd lived here for 3 years, but I'd never really seen it. I'd been too focused on climbing a ladder that was rigged against me from the start. The driver let me out in front of the building. The doorman greeted me like always. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Ashford." Mrs. Ashford, that name felt like a chain. I rode the elevator to the penthouse floor, used my key to open the door. Daniel was waiting in the living room. He looked terrible, exhausted, guilty. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. "I should have said something. I should have defended you." I set my box down on the marble entryway floor. "Yes," I said, "you should have." "My father," he started. "Your father is a manipulative, controlling man who cares more about power than people," I interrupted. "And you're too afraid of him to be the man I thought I married." Daniel flinched. "That's not fair." "Fair," I repeated. "You stood there and watched me get humiliated, fired, destroyed, and you said nothing. 4 words, Daniel, you gave me 4 words. It's Dad's company. That's all I was worth to you." "You don't understand the pressure," he began. "I understand perfectly," I said. "I understand that when it came down to choosing between me and your father's approval, you chose him. Just like you always do, just like you always will." Silence filled the expensive room. All around us were things his family had bought. Furniture, art, even the roof over our heads. Nothing was truly ours. "What do you want me to do?" Daniel asked finally. "I want you to grow a spine," I said, "but I don't think that's going to happen." I walked to our bedroom, started pulling out suitcases. Daniel followed me. "What are you doing?" "Leaving," I said simply. "I can't stay here. I can't stay married to someone who doesn't have my back when it matters." "You're leaving me," his voice cracked, "over this." I turned to face him, really looked at him. This man I'd loved. This man I'd built a life with. "You left me first," I said. "You left me alone in that boardroom. You left me alone in this marriage a long time ago. I'm just finally catching up." I packed quickly. Clothes, toiletries, important documents. Everything that was truly mine fit in 2 suitcases. "Where will you go?" Daniel asked. "Somewhere that's mine," I said. "Not your family's, not bought with Ashford money, somewhere real." I pulled off my wedding ring, set it on the dresser. Daniel stared at it like I'd pulled out a weapon. "Don't do this," he whispered. "Please, we can fix this. I'll talk to my father. I'll make him understand." "Your father understands perfectly," I said. "He got exactly what he wanted. He removed the problem, and you helped him do it." I grabbed my suitcases and walked toward the door. "I love you," Daniel said desperately. I stopped, turned back one last time. "Then you should have fought for me," I said. "Love without action is just words, and I'm done living on words." I left, walked out of the penthouse, out of the building, out of the life I'd tried so hard to fit into. I checked into a hotel. Nothing fancy, just a clean room with a bed and Wi-Fi. I sat on the edge of that bed and finally let myself fall apart. I cried for the career I'd lost, the marriage that had failed, the family I'd never really been part of. I cried until I had nothing left. And then I got angry. The first meeting of the rebels, as we started calling ourselves, happened 2 days later in a coffee shop 3 blocks from Ashford Enterprises. Neutral territory. Somewhere we could talk without fear of corporate spies or executive eavesdropping. I arrived early, nursing a black coffee and a determination that had been building since I'd walked out of that penthouse. Failure wasn't an option anymore. Success was the only revenge worth having. Marcus showed up next, then Jennifer, then the others. 18 of us total. 18 people who'd thrown away security for a principle and now needed to figure out how to turn that principle into a plan. We took over the entire back section of the coffee shop, pulled tables together, ordered enough caffeine to fuel a small army, and started talking. "Okay," Marcus said, taking the role of moderator naturally. We all quit our jobs in spectacular fashion. That was the easy part. Now comes the hard part. Do we actually do this? Start a company? Or do we all start job hunting and chalk this up to an expensive display of principles? I'm not job hunting, Jennifer said immediately. I didn't walk out just to walk into another corporate machine. I want to build something different. Different how? David asked. We're all business strategists and analysts. We're not exactly revolutionizing a new field here. No. But we can do it better, I said. The idea that had been forming in my mind for 2 days was finally ready. Ashford Enterprises is successful, but it's also bloated, slow, political. They spend more time on internal power games than on actual innovation. We don't have to beat them at their own game. We have to play a different game entirely. Patricia leaned forward. Keep talking. We're smaller, which means we can be faster, more agile. We don't have layers of bureaucracy. We can make decisions in hours instead of months. We can take on projects that are too small or too experimental for the big players. We can outmaneuver instead of outspend. We also have no capital, no clients, and no office, someone pointed out. Kind of hard to compete when you're operating out of a coffee shop. We have something better than capital, Marcus said, catching on to where I was going. We have knowledge. We know exactly how Ashford operates. Their strategies, their weaknesses, their blind spots. We know which clients are happy and which are just tolerating them. That's intelligence money can't buy. The energy in the group shifted. This was starting to feel possible. I have some savings, Jennifer said. Not much, but I can contribute to startup costs. Same, said David. Maybe 15,000 I can put in. Around the table, people started volunteering what they could contribute. Money, skills, connections. It wasn't much, but it was something. I'd been doing math in my head since leaving the penthouse. I had my severance. I had savings Daniel didn't know about, money I'd kept separate just in case. I had about $80,000 I could access. I can put in 50,000, I said, to start. The group went quiet. That was real money, commitment money. Are you sure? Marcus asked. If this fails, that's gone. If this fails, I've lost everything anyway, I said. At least this way I'm betting on us instead of hoping someone else gives me a chance. We talked for 4 hours, hammered out the basics. We'd form an LLC, equal partnership model at least to start. Everyone who contributed capital or committed to full-time work would get equity. Democratic decision-making. No kings, no dictators, no patriarchs who could fire you on a whim. We'd focus on mid-market companies. Businesses too big for basic consulting, but too small to attract the premium firms. We'd offer strategic development, market analysis, operational efficiency. The same things we'd been doing at Ashford, but with better service and competitive pricing. Someone suggested we needed a name. The rebels wouldn't exactly inspire client confidence. We threw out ideas. Most were terrible. A few were generic. Then Patricia said, what about catalyst strategies? We're catalyzing change, being the catalyst for transformation. It felt right, not trying too hard, professional but different, it stuck. We'd need an office eventually, but for now, we'd work remote. Keep costs low until we had actual revenue. We'd leverage our networks to get our first clients. And we'd work harder than we'd ever worked, because failure meant proving Richard Ashford right. As the meeting wrapped up, Jennifer pulled out her laptop. We should make this official, she said. I can file the LLC paperwork tonight. We could be legitimate by the end of the week. Do it, I said. We all agreed, signed preliminary partnership agreements on napkins, which made us laugh despite the seriousness. Promised to have real contracts drafted by the end of the month. As people started leaving, Marcus pulled me aside. You know this is insane, right? He said. We're going up against a billionaire with unlimited resources and a 3-decade head start. I know, I said. And you're doing this partially for revenge. Partially, I admitted, but also because I'm tired of men like Richard Ashford deciding what I'm worth. I'm tired of being erased. I want to build something that's undeniably mine. Marcus smiled. Then let's make it undeniable. Over the next 2 weeks, Catalyst Strategies went from a coffee shop dream to an actual entity. We filed paperwork, set up bank accounts, created a website that Jennifer designed in 3 all-nighters fueled by spite and energy drinks. We divided responsibilities based on strengths. Marcus handled operations. Jennifer took marketing and client relations. David led analytics. Patricia managed project delivery. I focused on strategy and business development. The first client came from an unexpected source. One of Patricia's former colleagues from before Ashford had moved to a mid-sized tech company. They were struggling with a market expansion. Patricia pitched our services. We bid 40% less than what a traditional firm would charge and promised results in half the time. We got the contract, $35,000 for a 3-month project. It wasn't huge, but it was real. We had our first client. The team celebrated like we'd won the lottery, because in a way, we had. Someone believed in us. Someone was willing to bet their company's money on our ability to deliver. We delivered, worked around the clock. Every analysis was triple-checked, every recommendation backed by bulletproof data. We weren't just trying to do good work. We were trying to do perfect work. The client was thrilled. Not only did they renew for a second project, but they referred us to 2 other companies. Suddenly, we had a pipeline. Word started spreading in the industry. 22 people had walked out of Ashford Enterprises and started their own firm. Some people thought we were crazy. Others were intrigued. Everyone was watching to see what would happen next. I started getting LinkedIn messages. Former colleagues asking if we were hearing. Competitors trying to poach our team. Journalists wanting to write about the Ashford exodus. I ignored most of it, stayed focused on the work, but I documented everything. Every client win, every successful project, every piece of evidence that we weren't just survivors, we were competitors. About a month after we started, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "This is Alina Vasquez," the voice said, "from Meridian Industries." I sat up straighter. Meridian Industries was one of Ashford's biggest clients, a manufacturing giant worth billions. "How can I help you, Ms. Vasquez?" I asked carefully. "I heard you started a new firm," she said. "I'm looking for a fresh perspective on a supply chain optimization project. Ashford's been handling it, but frankly, they're moving too slow and charging too much. Are you interested in bidding?" This was the opportunity of a lifetime. It was also incredibly risky. Stealing an Ashford client would be an act of war. Richard would come after us with everything he had. "We're very interested," I said. "When can we meet?" We met 2 days later. Alina brought her team. I brought Marcus and Patricia. We pitched for 90 minutes, showed them what we could do differently, better, faster. They gave us the contract, a $200,000 project with potential for more. When the signed agreement came through, I sat in my tiny hotel room and stared at it. This was it, the point of no return. We just declared war on Ashford Enterprises, and they didn't even know it yet. I called an emergency team meeting that night. Everyone gathered in Marcus's apartment, which had become our unofficial headquarters. "We got Meridian," I announced. The room erupted. People were hugging, cheering, opening cheap champagne that someone had brought. "Do you know what this means?" Jennifer asked. "Meridian is huge. If we deliver on this, every mid to large company will want to work with us. And Ashford will lose one of their anchor clients," David added. "Richard's going to lose his mind." The celebration continued, but I felt the weight of what we'd started. This wasn't just business anymore. This was personal. This was revenge dressed in quarterly earnings and client satisfaction. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Congratulations on Meridian, impressive. R.A." Richard, he already knew. Of course he knew. He probably had people watching us, reporting back. I showed the text to Marcus. "He's trying to intimidate you," Marcus said. "Don't let him." But it wasn't intimidation I felt. It was satisfaction. He was watching, which meant we were making an impact. I texted back, "Just getting started." His response came 30 seconds later. So am I. The war had officially begun, and I had 18 soldiers who'd chosen to fight beside me, not because they had to, but because they believed it was right. Those 22 people who walked out that day, 4 had found other jobs and moved on, which I understood. But the 18 who stayed became more than colleagues. They became family. The real kind, not the kind bound by blood and obligation, but by choice and shared purpose. We'd lost everything walking out of Ashford Enterprises. Our jobs, our security, our predictable futures. But we'd gained something infinitely more valuable. We'd gained our integrity, our autonomy, and the chance to prove that we were worth more than anyone had given us credit for. Richard Ashford thought firing me would make me disappear. Instead, he'd created his most motivated competitor. And I was just getting started. Success, I learned, doesn't make your problems disappear. It just replaces them with more complicated ones. The Meridian contract was everything we needed and everything we feared. The project was massive, complex, and absolutely critical to our reputation. If we succeeded, we'd be legitimate. If we failed, we'd prove every critic right and probably destroy the company before it really started. We threw everything into it. 18-hour days became normal. My hotel room became just a place to shower and sleep for a few hours before starting again. We rented a small office space, barely bigger than a large apartment, and crammed in desks wherever they'd fit. The work was grueling, but there was something pure about it. No politics, no posturing, just talented people solving problems together. Every voice mattered. Every idea got heard. It was everything Ashford Enterprises pretended to be but never was. But while we were building something new, my old life was falling apart in ways I couldn't ignore anymore. Daniel started calling constantly, 10, 15 times a day, leaving voicemails that ranged from apologetic to angry to desperate. I didn't answer, didn't listen to most of them. What was there to say? He'd made his choice. I'd made mine. Then the lawyer letters started arriving. Divorce papers that his family's attorneys had filed on his behalf. They were seeking an annulment based on irreconcilable differences and claiming I'd entered the marriage under false pretenses. I read those papers sitting in our cramped office at midnight, and I actually laughed. False pretenses. They were rewriting history, trying to make it seem like I'd been some kind of gold digger who'd trapped their precious son. Jennifer looked up from her computer. What's funny? They're trying to annul the marriage, I said, claiming I married Daniel for money and status. That's insane, she said. You had your own career, you didn't need them. Truth doesn't matter to people like the Ashfords, I said. Only narrative matters, and they're writing one where I'm the villain. I hired a lawyer, not one of the expensive ones who handled billionaire divorces. I couldn't afford that, but a scrappy family law attorney named Rebecca Chen who'd built her reputation defending people against powerful opponents. They're going to come at you hard, Rebecca warned me in our first meeting. They have unlimited resources and a reputation to protect. They'll try to make you look incompetent, greedy, unstable, anything to justify the firing and the divorce. Let them try, I said. I've got documentation of everything. 3 years of exemplary performance reviews, project outcomes, client testimonials. They can spin whatever story they want, but the facts are on my side. Facts matter less than you'd think in these situations, Rebecca said gently, but we'll fight anyway. The divorce became a second war I was fighting while trying to build a company. Discovery requests, depositions, financial disclosures. It consumed time I didn't have and emotional energy I couldn't spare. Daniel requested a meeting, just the two of us. No lawyers. Rebecca advised against it, but I agreed anyway. I needed to look him in the eye one more time. We met at a neutral location, a quiet restaurant where we'd had our first date. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. He looked terrible, weight loss, dark circles under his eyes. This was hurting him too, which gave me no satisfaction. I'd loved this man. Part of me still did, which made everything worse. I didn't want this, he said before we'd even ordered. The divorce, the annulment, That's all my father and the lawyers. I just wanted time, space to figure things out. You had your chance to figure things out, I said. In that boardroom. That was the moment that mattered, and you chose silence. I was in shock, he said. I didn't know what to say. You could have said anything, Daniel. Literally anything would have been better than what you did. He reached across the table like he might take my hand, then thought better of it. I know I failed you. I know I'm weak. My father has always been. He's always been impossible to stand up to. My whole life I've watched people try and fail. I didn't think I could be different. You didn't even try, I said. That's what hurts. You didn't even try. Silence stretched between us. The waiter came and went. Neither of us had touched our water. The annulment is cruel, I said finally. False pretenses, really, you know that's a lie. I'll talk to them, Daniel said. Get them to change it to a regular divorce. No fault. Your family doesn't do anything without your father's approval, I said. Can you actually stand up to him, or are these just more empty words? He looked down at the table. I'll try. Trying isn't good enough anymore, I said. Either you have a spine or you don't. Either you tell your father the truth or you let him rewrite history to protect his ego. Choose. I stood up. This meeting was over. I still love you, Daniel said quietly. I paused. Then you should have loved me when it mattered. I left him sitting there and didn't look back. The annulment changed to a standard divorce 2 weeks later. No admission of wrongdoing, but at least they dropped the character assassination. Small victories. Meanwhile, Catalyst Strategies was facing attacks from other directions. Our website got hit with a massive DDoS attack that took it down for 3 days. Our hosting provider said it was one of the most sophisticated attacks they'd seen from a non-state actor. We started getting 1-star reviews on business directories from accounts that had been created the same day, all saying variations of the same thing: unprofessional, unreliable former Ashford employees who couldn't hack it. 2 of our potential clients suddenly canceled meetings at the last minute with vague excuses. Later, we found out through back channels that they'd received calls from Ashford representatives suggesting that working with us might jeopardize their relationship with the larger firm. Richard was playing dirty, using his power and connections to try to strangle us before we could become a real threat. We fought back the only way we could: better work, better results, better client service. The Meridian project was progressing beautifully. We were ahead of schedule and under budget. Our recommendations were already showing measurable impact. Elena Vasquez sent an email saying we were the best consulting decision she'd made in years. That email made it into our marketing materials within hours. We picked up 3 more clients in 6 weeks. None as large as Meridian, but solid, profitable work. Our revenue was growing. We were paying ourselves actual salaries now, not just scraping by. Then something unexpected happened. I got a message through LinkedIn from someone named James Bartlett, Senior VP at Hartwell Financial, another Ashford client. Would like to discuss a potential opportunity. Confidential. Are you available to meet? I was suspicious. This could be a setup, a way for Richard to gather information or build a case for corporate espionage. But I met with James anyway, at a coffee shop far from both our offices. He was direct. Ashford has been handling our investment strategy consulting for 4 years, he said. They've been fine, just fine. But I've been hearing things about your firm, about the Meridian results. I'm interested in what you could do for us. We'd be competing directly with Ashford, I said. I need to be transparent about that. I know exactly who you are, James said. Richard's former daughter-in-law, the woman who walked out with half his development team. I know the history. And you're still interested. I'm interested because you're getting results, he said. Richard Ashford is brilliant, but he's also complacent. He's been the biggest player for so long that he's stopped innovating. I need someone hungry, someone who has something to prove. We talked for 2 hours. By the end, he'd verbally committed to bringing us in for a formal pitch. This was bigger than Meridian. Hartwell Financial was one of Ashford's longest-standing clients. Losing them would hurt Richard's bottom line and his reputation. I called an emergency team meeting that night. "We have a shot at Hartwell Financial," I announced. "But I need everyone to understand what this means. This isn't just business. This is personal. Richard will see this as a declaration of war. He'll come at us with everything he has, legal, financial, professional. He'll try to destroy us." The room was quiet. People exchanged glances. Marcus spoke first. "We walked out knowing there'd be consequences. This is just the next level of consequences. I say we go for it." "All in favor?" I asked. Every hand went up. Not a single person hesitated. "Then let's show them what we're made of," I said. We prepared for that pitch like our lives depended on it, because in a very real way, they did. We analyzed Hartwell's entire operation, found inefficiencies Ashford had been ignoring for years, developed a strategy that would save them millions while positioning them for expansion. The pitch was scheduled for 3 weeks out. We had that long to build the perfect presentation. 2 weeks before the pitch, I got a visitor at the office. Catherine Ashford, Daniel's mother. I hadn't spoken to her since the firing. She walked into our modest office in her designer clothes and looked around like she'd entered a homeless shelter. The judgment in her eyes was clear. "Can we speak privately?" she asked. I led her to the tiny conference room we'd created by putting up a divider. "This is quite the step down from Ashford's executive floor," she said, settling into a basic office chair like it might contaminate her. "It's ours," I said simply. "That makes it better." She got straight to the point. "You're hurting my son. This divorce, this company, this campaign of revenge. Daniel is devastated." "Daniel had a chance to not be devastated," I said. "He chose his family over his wife. Actions have consequences." "You're being vindictive," Catherine said. "Going after Richard's clients, trying to damage the company, it's beneath you." I actually laughed. "Beneath me? Your husband fired me in front of a boardroom full of executives. Your family tried to annul my marriage by claiming I was a gold digger. You all tried to erase 3 years of my work and paint me as incompetent. And you think I'm being vindictive by competing in the free market?" "We're family," she said. "No," I corrected. "You were my family, past tense. You stopped being family the moment Richard decided I was disposable." Catherine's expression hardened. "Richard wants to make you an offer, a settlement, enough money to walk away from all this, start over somewhere else, somewhere far from our clients and our industry." "He wants to buy me off," I said. "He wants to resolve this situation peacefully," she said, "before more damage is done." "How much?" I asked, curious despite myself. $5 million, tax-free. In exchange for shutting down Catalyst strategies, signing a comprehensive non-compete, and agreeing to never publicly discuss your time at Ashford Enterprises. $5 million. Life-changing money. Enough to start over anywhere doing anything. Enough to never worry about finances again. It was also a confession of fear. Richard wouldn't offer that much unless he saw us as a genuine threat. "Tell Richard I'm not interested," I said. Catherine blinked. "You're not even going to think about it." "There's nothing to think about," I said. "I'm not walking away. I'm not disappearing. I'm going to build the best consulting firm in this industry, and I'm going to do it by being better than Ashford Enterprises. No amount of money changes that." "You're making a mistake," Catherine said, standing. "Richard doesn't lose. When people challenge him, he destroys them. Every time." "There's a first time for everything," I said. She left without another word. I watched from the window as her driver opened the door of her luxury car, and she disappeared inside. Jennifer had been hovering nearby, obviously listening. "You just turned down $5 million, she said, sounding odd and slightly horrified. "I did," I confirmed. "Are you insane?" "Probably," I said, "but I'm not for sale, and neither is this company." Word of Richard's offer spread through the team by end of day. I didn't try to hide it. They deserved to know what was happening. That night, Marcus pulled me aside. "You know that offer proves we're winning, right?" he said. "He's scared, actually scared. A man like Richard Ashford doesn't throw around 5 million unless he's genuinely worried." "I know," I said. "Good." Marcus said, "Because now comes the hard part. He's going to escalate. The attacks are going to get worse." "Let them come," I said. "We didn't start this fight, but we're damn well going to finish it." The next week, 3 of our smaller clients received letters from Ashford's legal team, suggesting that working with us might expose them to legal liability due to stolen intellectual property and confidential business information. It was completely baseless. We hadn't stolen anything, but the threat of legal action was enough to scare 2 of them into canceling their contracts. We lost $40,000 in revenue in a single day. The team was shaken. This was real financial damage. People had bills, families, responsibilities. I called everyone together. "I know this is scary," I said. "I know some of you are wondering if you made a mistake walking out with me. If you want to leave, find something more stable, I understand. No hard feelings. But I need you to know something. We're on the right side of this. We're doing good work. We're building something meaningful. And Richard Ashford is trying to destroy us because he knows we're going to succeed. The question is whether we let fear stop us or whether we push through." Nobody left, not one person. Instead, we worked harder, delivered exceptional results for our remaining clients, and prepared for the Hartwell financial pitch like it was the Super Bowl of consulting. The day before the pitch, I got a text from Daniel. "My father knows about Hartwell. He's planning something, be careful." It was the first time Daniel had ever warned me about his father. The first time he'd chosen my side, even in this small way. I texted back, "Thank you." His response came a minute later. "I should have done more, I'm sorry." Too little, too late, but it was something. The next day, we walked into Hartwell Financial's conference room to change everything. The Hartwell Financial Boardroom was nothing like Ashford's luxury showcase. It was functional, professional, designed for work rather than intimidation. I took that as a good sign. James Bartlett was there with 4 other executives. They looked interested but skeptical. We were the scrappy upstarts. We had to prove we belonged in the same conversation as established firms. We pitched for 90 minutes. Marcus handled the operational analysis. Patricia presented the implementation timeline. I delivered the strategic vision. We moved like a synchronized unit, each person's presentation flowing seamlessly into the next. We showed them exactly where Ashford had been leaving money on the table. Identified 7 specific areas where more aggressive strategy could yield better returns. Demonstrated how our lean structure meant faster response times and more personalized attention. The numbers were undeniable. Our approach would save them $3.2 million in the first year, while positioning them for expansion into 2 new markets. When we finished, James sat back in his chair. "This is significantly more detailed than anything Ashford has provided in 4 years." "We're hungry," I said simply, "and we don't take any client for granted." "I can see that," he said. He looked at his team. "Questions?" They had plenty. Technical questions, implementation questions, questions about our capacity and resources. We answered everything with confidence backed by data. As the meeting wrapped up, James stood and shook my hand. "We'll have a decision by end of week." Walking out of that building, I felt electricity in my veins. We'd nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. "They're going to choose us," Jennifer said, barely containing her excitement. "Did you see their faces? They were impressed." "Don't celebrate until the contract is signed," Marcus warned. "Richard's going to make a countermove. He won't let Hartwell go without a fight." Marcus was right. 2 days later, James called me personally. "I need to be honest with you about something. Richard Ashford came to our offices yesterday, unannounced. He met with our CEO directly." My stomach dropped. "What did he say?" "He offered to cut Ashford's fees by 40%, effective immediately. And he made some implications about your firm's stability and reliability. Suggested that you're driven by personal vendettas rather than professional ethics." That's not true, I said. I know, James said, which is why I'm telling you about it instead of just going with his offer. But I need you to understand the position this puts us in. 40% is significant savings. We can match that, I said immediately, and still deliver better results. There was a pause. You're willing to cut your bid by 40%. I was doing math in my head. At that rate, we'd barely break even. But losing this contract meant more than losing money. It meant losing credibility and momentum. Yes, I said. We believe in this project. We believe we can transform your operation. And we're willing to prove it even if it means taking a financial hit. Let me discuss this with my team, James said. I'll be in touch. I hung up and immediately called an emergency meeting. We need to cut the Hartwell bid by 40%, I announced. The room erupted in protests. That was unsustainable. We'd be working for almost nothing. We had overhead, salaries, costs. I know, I said, but if we lose this, Richard wins. He gets to keep claiming he's untouchable. Every other potential client will see that challenging Ashford is futile. We have to win this, whatever it costs. What if we win it and it bankrupts us? David asked. We can't run a company on razor-thin margins forever. We won't have to, I said. Hartwell is a proof of concept. Win this, deliver exceptional results, and we can charge premium rates for every client after. But we need this win. We need it more than we need profit right now. The vote was close. 10 in favor, 8 opposed, but majority carried. We restructured the entire proposal. Cut costs everywhere we could. People volunteered to take temporary pay cuts to make the numbers work. The sacrifice was real, but so was the determination. James called back the next day. Against my better judgment and the advice of my CFO, we're going with you. You matched the price and your presentation was stronger. But understand this, we're taking a risk on you. Don't make us regret it. You won't, I promised. The contract came through that afternoon. The moment it was signed, I sent a message to the entire team. We got Hartwell. The office erupted. People were crying, hugging, celebrating like we'd won the lottery. In a way, we had. This was validation, proof that we could compete with the giants. That night, I treated myself to something I hadn't done in months. I sat in my hotel room with a glass of wine and just breathed, allowed myself to feel proud, to acknowledge how far we'd come. My phone rang, unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Congratulations, Richard's voice, cold, controlled. You've won a Pyrrhic victory. Do you even understand what that means? It means I took one of your oldest clients, I said, and I'll take more. You're destroying yourself financially to spite me, he said. That's not business. That's childish revenge. You fired me to protect your ego, I countered. Don't lecture me about professionalism. I gave you opportunities you never would have had otherwise, Richard said, his voice rising slightly. I brought you into my company, my family, gave you access to resources and connections you couldn't have dreamed of. And this is how you repay me, by trying to tear down everything I've built. You didn't give me anything, I said, feeling years of suppressed anger rising. I earned every opportunity, every success, every result. You just took credit for it. And when I stopped being useful, when I started asking for recognition, you threw me away. So no, Richard, I don't owe you gratitude. I don't owe you anything. Silence on the line. When he spoke again, his voice was ice. You have no idea what you've started. I've been playing this game since before you were born. I've destroyed better competitors than you, smarter, better funded, more experienced. They all thought they could challenge me. Where are they now? I'm not them, I said. No, he agreed. Your family. Which makes this betrayal so much worse, and the consequences so much more severe. He hung up. I sat there, my hand trembling slightly. That was a declaration of total war. No more subtle sabotage. No more warning shots. Richard was coming for us with everything he had. I forwarded Daniel's warning text to our lawyer, Rebecca. Documentation of everything would matter if things got legal. The Hartwell project kicked off the next week. We assigned our best people, worked around the clock. Every deliverable was perfect, every recommendation backed by triple-checked analysis. 6 weeks in, we were showing results. Hartwell's efficiency had improved by 18%. Their market positioning was stronger. James sent an email to his board praising our work, and someone leaked it to an industry newsletter. Hartwell Financial credits new consulting firm Catalyst Strategies with transformative results in just 6 weeks, raising questions about the value delivered by long-term partner Ashford Enterprises. The article went semi-viral in business circles. We started getting inquiries from companies we'd never approached. Our website traffic increased by 400%. We hired 3 new people to handle the influx, rented a bigger office space, started looking like a real company instead of a scrappy startup. Then the industry publication, Business Strategies Quarterly, reached out. They wanted to do a feature article about Catalyst Strategies, the underdog story, David versus Goliath. It was the kind of publicity that could change everything. I agreed to the interview. The journalist, a woman named Sarah Mitchell, was thorough. She asked about our founding, our approach, our clients, and inevitably she asked about Ashford. "Is it true you were fired by your father-in-law?" she asked. I'd known this question was coming. I could dodge it, give some corporate non-answer, or I could tell the truth. "Yes," I said. "Richard Ashford fired me in a boardroom full of executives with no real explanation beyond vague comments about company culture." 22 colleagues walked out in protest. 18 of them are now part of Catalyst Strategies. "That's quite a story," Sarah said. "Why do you think he fired you?" I chose my words carefully. I think powerful people become accustomed to controlling the narrative. When someone challenges that control, asks for recognition, demands to be seen as more than an extension of their empire, it threatens them. I was good at my job, exceptionally good, but I wanted credit for that work. That made me inconvenient. So this company is about revenge. This company is about proving that talent and hard work matter more than connections and power, I said. If that also happens to demonstrate that Richard Ashford made a massive mistake, that's just a bonus. The article came out 2 weeks later. The headline was perfect. "From Fired to Fierce: How One Woman Built a Consulting Firm to Rival Her Billionaire Father-in-Law's Empire." It was everywhere. LinkedIn, Twitter, business blogs, industry forums. We got mentioned on a major financial news network. Our phone didn't stop ringing. Companies wanted to work with us. Talented consultants wanted to join us. Investors wanted to talk about funding. In 3 months, we'd gone from 18 desperate people in a coffee shop to a recognized player in the industry. Ashford Enterprises was bleeding clients, not just the ones we'd taken, but others who saw the tide shifting. Richard's reputation as untouchable was cracking. I heard through industry contacts that he was furious, that there had been screaming matches in the executive offices, that heads were rolling as he tried to figure out how we'd gained so much ground so quickly. The answer was simple. We were better, faster, hungrier. We treated clients like partners instead of revenue streams. We delivered results instead of promises. But Richard wasn't done, not even close. Our bank accounts got frozen pending an investigation into suspicious financial activity. It took 3 days and a lawyer to get them unfrozen. The investigation found nothing because there was nothing to find, but those 3 days nearly killed us. One of our new hires turned out to be a corporate spy, feeding information back to Ashford. We caught them when Jennifer noticed inconsistencies in their access logs, fired them immediately, and changed all our security protocols. A rumor started circulating that our success was built on stolen Ashford intellectual property. Complete fabrication, but it spread anyway. We had to issue public statements and provide documentation to several clients to maintain trust. Every attack made us stronger, more careful, more resilient, more determined. 8 months after walking out of Ashford Enterprises, Catalyst Strategies had 27 employees, 12 major clients, and annual revenue projected at $8 million. We were profitable, growing, thriving. And we were about to make the move that would change everything. One of our new clients mentioned that they'd heard Ashford was struggling. That Richard had been making mistakes, chasing the wrong markets, doubling down on failing strategies. That the company's dominance was more reputation than reality at this point. I started researching, quietly, carefully, looking at public financial data, client reviews, employee satisfaction ratings. Ashford Enterprises was still huge, still powerful, but it was also bloated, slow, and increasingly out of touch with market demands. Richard had spent so much time trying to destroy us that he'd stopped paying attention to his own company's vulnerabilities. I called Marcus, Jennifer, and Patricia into the conference room, our core leadership team. What if we didn't just compete with Ashford? I said. What if we actually replaced them? What do you mean? Patricia asked. I mean we go after their top 10 clients, all of them, simultaneously. Offer better service, better pricing, better results. We coordinate a campaign to show the entire industry that Ashford's era is over and ours is beginning. That's incredibly aggressive, Marcus said, but he was smiling. I love it. It's also incredibly risky, Jennifer added. If we fail, we look like overconfident amateurs. And if we succeed, I said, we become the dominant player in our market segment. We stop being the underdog and become the leader. We spent 3 weeks planning, identifying Ashford's most vulnerable client relationships, developing custom pitches for each one, coordinating timing so we'd hit them all within a 2-week window. It was the most ambitious thing we'd ever attempted. It was also the most terrifying. The campaign launched on a Monday. We sent pitch proposals to 10 companies, all current Ashford clients, all carefully researched and targeted. By Friday, we had meetings scheduled with 7 of them. Richard found out by the following Monday. I know because I got a phone call from Daniel. What are you doing? He asked, sounding panicked. My father is losing his mind. He's threatening lawsuits, regulatory complaints, everything. He thinks you're trying to destroy him. I'm competing with him, I said calmly. That's called capitalism. If he can't handle competition, maybe he's not the business genius everyone thinks he is. This isn't business anymore, Daniel said. This is personal, this is vendetta. It became personal when he fired me to protect his ego, I said. I'm just finishing what he started. He's my father, Daniel said quietly. Whatever happened between us, he's still my father. I can't watch you destroy him. Then don't watch, I said. But don't ask me to stop either. I've earned this. Every client we take because we're better, not because of tricks or sabotage, because we deliver superior results. If that destroys his empire, he has nobody to blame but himself. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. I don't know who you are anymore. I'm who I always was, I said. You just finally see me clearly. I hung up. Within 3 weeks, we'd secured contracts with 4 of the 10 targeted companies. 4 more were in serious discussions. Only 2 had definitively stayed with Ashford. The industry was buzzing. Articles were being written about the consulting wars and the fall of the Ashford empire. We were being featured in case studies at business schools. We hired more people, expanded to a second office, started developing proprietary tools and methodologies. Catalyst Strategies wasn't just surviving, we were dominating. And Richard Ashford was about to find out exactly what it felt like to lose everything. The invitation came on a Tuesday morning, embossed cardstock, hand-delivered to our office. The Ashford family was hosting their annual charity gala. I was cordially invited. It was absurd. After everything that had happened, they wanted me at their social event. I showed it to Jennifer. It's a trap, she said immediately. Has to be. Richard wants you there for some reason. Probably to humiliate me publicly, I said. Show everyone I'm still beneath him somehow. So don't go, she said. But something about the invitation intrigued me. Richard didn't do anything without calculation. If he wanted me there, it meant something was happening, something I needed to see. I'm going, I decided. Then I'm coming with you, Jennifer said. moral support, and witness in case he tries anything. The gala was 3 weeks away. Plenty of time to prepare, to strategize, to figure out what Richard might be planning. In those 3 weeks, we closed 2 more of the targeted Ashford clients. That made 6 out of 10. Ashford Enterprises had just lost nearly 30% of their major client base. Industry analysts were starting to predict that Ashford might not survive the year. Their stock price was dropping. Key executives were leaving. The empire was crumbling, and everyone could see it. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated. This was everything I'd worked for. Instead, I felt strangely empty. Revenge was supposed to be satisfying, but it just felt like work. Important work, necessary work, but not the emotional catharsis I'd expected. The night of the gala arrived. I dressed carefully. An elegant black gown that I'd bought with my own money, not Ashford money. Hair and makeup professional but understated. I wanted to look successful, confident, untouchable. Jennifer wore a deep blue dress and enough attitude to arm a small nation. "If anyone says anything rude, I'm throwing a drink," she announced in the car. "Please don't," I said. "Let's try to get through this without creating a scene." "Where's the fun in that?" she muttered. The Ashford estate looked exactly as I remembered. Overwhelming, opulent, designed to make you feel small. The driveway was packed with luxury cars. The kind of event where net worths got measured in billions, not millions. We walked in and I felt eyes turn. Whispers followed us. Everyone knew who I was, the former daughter-in-law who'd declared war on the family. I was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid for showing up. The ballroom was decorated like something from a fairy tale. Orchestra playing, champagne flowing, hundreds of people in formal wear networking and socializing. I spotted Richard across the room. He was holding court with a group of business leaders, playing the role of gracious host. But when his eyes met mine, something cold flashed there. Daniel was there too, standing with his mother. He looked miserable in his tuxedo. When he saw me, his expression became even more pained. "This was a mistake," I whispered to Jennifer. "Too late now," she said. "Chin up, you belong here just as much as any of them." We made our way through the crowd. Some people nodded politely. Others turned away. A few brave souls actually approached to congratulate me on Catalyst's success. Then Richard approached. The crowd seemed to part for him automatically. "I'm glad you came," he said, his voice carrying that familiar authority. "We should talk privately." "Anything you need to say, you can say in front of Jennifer," I replied. His jaw tightened slightly. "Very well, there's a study off the main hall, 5 minutes." He walked away, without waiting for confirmation. "Definitely a trap," Jennifer said. "Probably," I agreed, "but I need to know what he wants." We waited the 5 minutes, then made our way to the study. Richard was there, along with Thomas Sterling, the CFO, and 2 people I didn't recognize but who had expensive lawyer written all over them. "This hardly seems private," I said. "Sit down," Richard said. "It wasn't a request." I remained standing. "I'm fine here." Richard sighed like I was being difficult. "I'm prepared to make you a final offer, $10 million, plus a formal letter of recommendation, and an agreement that ends all this hostility." "In exchange for?" I asked, though I already knew. "Shut down Catalyst Strategies, sign a non-compete that covers the entire consulting industry, cease all contact with our former clients, essentially disappear from my professional world entirely." "You offered $5 million before," I noted. "The price has gone up. That means I'm winning." "You're hemorrhaging money trying to compete with me," Richard said. "Your margins are unsustainable. You're one bad quarter away from collapse. This is your chance to walk away with something instead of losing everything." I looked at the lawyers, at Thomas, back at Richard. They actually believed this would work, that I could be bought off. "No," I said simply. "Don't be stupid," Richard snapped. "You can't win. You're a gnat annoying an elephant. Eventually I'll crush you. This is me being generous." "You've lost 6 of your 10 biggest clients in 3 months," I said. Your stock price is down 23%. Key executives are abandoning ship. You're not an elephant anymore, Richard. You're a dinosaur watching the meteor coming." His face went red. "You think you've won? You think this little venture of yours is sustainable? You're burning through capital, working unsustainable hours, held together by spite and desperation. The moment you lose momentum, it all falls apart." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe we're the future and you're the past. Either way, I'm not taking your money. I'm not disappearing. I'm going to keep building my company, serving my clients, and proving every single day that you made the biggest mistake of your career when you fired me." "I made you," Richard said, his voice low and dangerous. "Without me, you'd still be nobody, working at some mid-level firm, making a fraction of what you made at Ashford. Everything you have, everything you are, is because I gave you a chance." "You didn't make me," I said, years of anger finally crystallizing into perfect clarity. "I made myself. I earned every achievement, every success, every result. You just happened to be there. And when I stopped making you look good, when I started asking for recognition, you threw me away like garbage. So no, Richard, you don't get credit for my success, and you don't get to buy your way out of the consequences of your choices." I turned to leave. "I'll destroy you," Richard said. "If you walk out that door, I'll use every resource, every connection, every advantage I have to make sure you fail. I'll make sure no one in this industry ever works with you again. You'll do what you've been trying to do for a year," I interrupted. "And you'll fail, just like you've been failing, because you're not as powerful as you think you are, and I'm stronger than you ever gave me credit for." Jennifer and I walked out. Behind us, I heard something crash. Richard throwing something, probably. Losing his temper the way powerful men do when they finally realize they're not in control. We made it back to the ballroom. The party continued around us, oblivious to the confrontation that had just happened. Then I saw Daniel. He was walking toward me with purpose. "We need to talk," he said. "Not now, Daniel." "Yes, now," he insisted. He took my arm gently, leading me toward a quieter corner. Jennifer hovered nearby, protective. "I heard what happened in the study," Daniel said. "My father is planning something bad. He's talking to lawyers about filing a massive lawsuit, tortious interference, theft of trade secrets. He's going to try to tie you up in legal battles until you run out of money." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because it's wrong," Daniel said. "All of it, what he did to you, what he's doing now. I've been a coward, I know that, but I can't watch him destroy you without at least warning you." "Is that all you can do?" I asked. "Warn me. Can you actually stand up to him? Can you tell him he's wrong?" Daniel looked down. "He's my father, the company is his life's work. I can't." "Then we have nothing to talk about," I said. "Thank you for the warning, but unless you're willing to actually do something, it doesn't change anything between us." "What if I testified?" Daniel said suddenly. "If he files a lawsuit, what if I testified on your behalf, told the truth about what really happened?" I stared at him. "You'd do that, go against your father in court." "I'd do it for you," he said quietly. "I know I failed you before. Let me do the right thing now, even if it's too late for us." It was the first time Daniel had ever offered real action instead of empty words. The first time he'd been willing to sacrifice something that mattered for me. "If it comes to that," I said carefully, "I'll let my lawyers know you're willing to cooperate." He nodded, looked like he wanted to say more, but Catherine appeared, touching his arm. "Daniel, darling, people are asking for you," she said. Then her eyes landed on me, cold, dismissive. "I'm surprised you're still here. I thought you'd have left by now." "Just leaving," I said. Jennifer and I made our exit, got into our car, didn't speak until we were safely away from the estate. "That was intense," Jennifer finally said. "Richard's going to sue us," I said. "Big lawsuit, designed to drain our resources and destroy our reputation." "Can we survive that?" she asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "We're profitable, but we don't have the kind of money needed for a prolonged legal battle with a billionaire. If he ties us up in court for years, it might not matter if we eventually win. We could be destroyed before we get the chance." We drove in silence for a while. "So what do we do?" Jennifer asked. I thought about Richard's red face, his threats, his certainty that he could still control the outcome, and I thought about what actually scared him, not our success, not the clients we'd taken. What scared him was losing his reputation, his legacy, the empire he'd built over decades. "We go public with everything," I said. "The real story, not just business competition, but what he did, how he fired me, the intimidation, the sabotage, the attempts to buy me off. We make this about more than just two companies competing. We make it about ethics, about power, about how billionaires abuse people and expect to get away with it." "That's nuclear," Jennifer said. "You'll never be able to work in certain circles again." "I don't want to work in those circles," I said. "I want to build something better, something that doesn't require selling your soul." "Okay," Jennifer said, "then let's do it." The lawsuit came 3 days later, 53 pages of legal accusations. Ashford Enterprises was suing Catalyst Strategies for $200 million in damages. They claimed we'd stolen trade secrets, engaged in tortious interference, violated confidentiality agreements, and damaged their business through malicious and unfounded claims. It was designed to intimidate, to overwhelm, to force us into settlement. Instead, we called a press conference. I stood in front of a room full of journalists and told the truth, all of it, the firing, the walkout, the sabotage, the buy-off attempts. I had documentation for everything, emails, texts, witness statements from the 22 people who'd walked out. "This lawsuit isn't about protecting trade secrets," I said. "It's about a powerful man trying to destroy someone who dared to challenge him. It's about using wealth and legal resources as weapons against people who can't fight back. And I'm here to say that I won't be intimidated. Catalyst Strategies will continue serving our clients and building our business, and we'll defend ourselves against these baseless accusations." The story exploded. National news picked it up. Social media was on fire. People were calling it a Me Too moment for corporate abuse. Others were calling me everything from a hero to a vindictive ex-family member. But the narrative had shifted. This wasn't just a business dispute anymore. It was a cultural conversation about power, privilege, and accountability. Ashford's stock dropped another 15% in 2 days. 3 of their remaining major clients announced they were exploring other consulting options. Richard's lawyers filed an emergency motion to stop me from making public statements. The judge denied it. Free speech. Then something unexpected happened. Other people started coming forward. Former Ashford employees with stories of similar mistreatment. Clients who'd been overcharged or underserved. A pattern of behavior that went back years. What I'd thought was personal turned out to be systemic. Richard hadn't just abused me. He'd built an empire on intimidation and exploitation. The board of directors at Ashford Enterprises called an emergency meeting. According to sources, they were discussing Richard's future with the company. Daniel called me. "My father had a heart attack, minor, but he's in the hospital, the stress, everything happening. I thought you should know." I felt a complicated mix of emotions. I didn't want Richard to die. I wasn't a monster. But I also couldn't bring myself to feel guilty for defending myself. "I'm sorry he's unwell," I said carefully. "But I'm not stopping, not backing down. He made choices that led to this." "I know," Daniel said. "I'm not asking you to stop. I'm telling you. And I want you to know I gave a statement to your lawyers. Everything I witnessed. Everything I know. When this goes to trial, I'll testify. I promised you that." "Thank you," I said. "It's too late for us, isn't it?" he asked quietly. "Yeah," I said. "It is, but maybe you can still save yourself. Stop being who your father wanted and figure out who you actually are." We hung up. It felt like a final goodbye. The death of what we'd been and the acceptance that we'd never be anything again. 2 weeks later, Ashford Enterprises board announced that Richard was stepping down as CEO to focus on his health and family. The corporate speak for forced out. The lawsuit was quietly withdrawn, not dismissed. Withdrawn, they gave up. Catalyst Strategies survived, more than survived. We became the story everyone was talking about, the David who actually beat Goliath. Companies wanted to work with us because of our values, our ethics, our willingness to stand up to power. We grew to 50 employees by year's end. Revenue hit 23 million. We were profitable, sustainable, and still growing. Richard Ashford's empire didn't collapse entirely. The company continued under new leadership, but his reputation never recovered. He became a cautionary tale about hubris and abuse of power. As for me, I'd won the war, taken everything from the man who tried to take everything from me. But standing in our new office, watching my team work, I realized something surprising. The revenge had stopped mattering somewhere along the way. What mattered was what we'd built, the culture we'd created, the people we'd empowered. Richard had tried to destroy me. Instead, he'd freed me to become who I was always meant to be. And that was the sweetest victory of all. 6 months after Richard stepped down, I sat in Catalyst Strategies' corner office and realized I'd stopped checking Ashford Enterprises' stock price. For months, it had been a daily ritual, a way to measure my victory. Then one day, I just forgot, and then I forgot to care. The view from this office was nothing compared to the luxury of Ashford's executive floor. No Italian marble, no imported chandelier, just windows overlooking the city and a desk I'd assembled myself because we were still watching expenses carefully. But it was mine, truly mine, built on my terms, my values, my work. Jennifer knocked on the open door. "You've got that look again," she said. "What look?" "The one where you're being philosophical and reflective instead of reviewing the quarterly projections like you're supposed to be doing," she said, dropping a folder on my desk with a grin. I laughed. "Caught me, what am I looking at?" "Third quarter results. We're up 37% from last quarter. Client retention is at 94%. We've got a waiting list of companies wanting to work with us." She paused. "We did it, actually did it, built something sustainable and successful." I opened the folder, scanning the numbers. They were even better than I'd hoped. Catalyst Strategies wasn't just surviving anymore. We were thriving in a way that felt solid, real, built on a foundation that would last. "How's the new mentorship program coming?" I asked. Jennifer's face lit up. This had been her pet project. 15 young women from underprivileged backgrounds. We're giving them real consulting experience, building their resumes, creating pathways into careers they wouldn't have access to otherwise. It's incredible watching them grow. This was what mattered now. Not revenge, not defeating Richard, but creating opportunities, building something meaningful, using our success to lift others up. Marcus appeared behind Jennifer. "Leadership team meeting in 10. We need to discuss the Singapore expansion." Singapore, we were opening an international office. The scrappy startup that had begun in a coffee shop was going global. The leadership meeting was productive, energetic, full of ideas and possibilities. We'd maintained the democratic structure even as we'd grown. Everyone had a voice. Decisions were made by consensus. It was slower sometimes, messier, but it meant people were invested in ways I'd never seen at traditional companies. After the meeting, Patricia pulled me aside. "I got a call from a recruiter today," she said. "Headhunter for a major firm, offering double what I make here plus bonuses." My stomach dropped. Losing Patricia would hurt. She was one of our best. "Are you taking it?" I asked. "Hell no," she said, laughing at my expression. "I told them I'm not interested, but I thought you should know they're actively trying to poach our people. We're making waves. People are noticing the talent we've assembled." "Did they say which firm?" I asked. Patricia's smile turned mischievous. "Ashford Enterprises. Apparently they're desperate to rebuild after the exodus." The irony was delicious. Richard's company, now under new leadership, was trying to hire back the very people they'd lost when we walked out. "How much did you tell them to pay you to consider it?" I asked. "I told them there wasn't enough money in the world," Patricia said. "What we've built here isn't just about salary, it's about values, culture, being part of something that actually matters. They can't compete with that." After she left, I sat with that thought. We'd created something that money couldn't buy and power couldn't corrupt. That was worth more than any quarterly earnings. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, but I recognized the area code. Daniel's mother, Catherine. Richard would like to speak with you. Would you be willing to meet? No lawyers, no games, just conversation. Catherine. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it. I'd won. What was left to say? But curiosity and something else, something like closure, made me respond. When and where? The meeting was set for the following week. Neutral location. A quiet restaurant far from both our offices. I told the leadership team where I'd be and why. Marcus immediately volunteered to come with me. I appreciate it, I said, but this is something I need to do alone. The day of the meeting arrived. I dressed professionally, but not to impress. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. Richard was already there when I arrived, sitting in a back booth. He looked older, thinner. The heart attack had taken something from him, or maybe it was everything that had led to the heart attack. "Thank you for coming," he said as I sat down. His voice lacked the commanding authority it once had. "Your wife said you wanted to talk," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. We ordered coffee, made awkward small talk about the weather. Then Richard got to the point. "I owe you an apology," he said. The words seemed to physically pain him. "What I did, firing you like that, the way I treated you afterward, it was wrong, inexcusable." I waited. An apology was nice, but I needed to understand if he actually grasped what he'd done. "I told myself it was business," he continued. "That you were becoming a problem, disrupting the company culture, getting too big for your position. But the truth is, you scared me. You were good, really good, better than I wanted to admit. And when you started asking for recognition, demanding credit for your work, it felt like a challenge to my authority, so I removed you." "Like I was a problem to solve instead of a person," I said. "Yes," he admitted. "I've spent my entire career viewing people as assets or liabilities, useful or problematic. I stopped seeing the humanity. I stopped seeing you as my son's wife, as someone who'd worked hard and earned respect. I just saw someone who wasn't following the script I'd written." "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. Richard looked down at his coffee. "Because I lost everything that mattered. The company's gone. I'm chairman emeritus, which is a fancy title for removed from actual power. My son barely speaks to me. My reputation is destroyed. And lying in that hospital bed, I realized I did it to myself. I destroyed my own legacy because I couldn't handle someone else being excellent." There was a time when hearing this would have felt triumphant. Richard Ashford, humbled and broken, admitting I was right. But sitting across from this diminished man, I just felt tired. "I accept your apology," I said. "But I need you to understand something. What you did didn't just hurt me. You created a culture where talented people were suppressed, where politics mattered more than performance, where power was more important than integrity. I wasn't the first person you treated that way. I was just the first one who fought back publicly." "I know," he said quietly. "Other people have come forward, stories I dismissed or ignored. I convinced myself I was building an empire. I was really just building a monument to my own ego." We sat in silence for a moment. "The company's doing better now," Richard said. "New CEO is implementing a lot of changes, more transparency, better culture. They're profitable again, stable. It's not what it was, but it's healthier." "That's good," I said and meant it. "Daniel told me he testified for you," Richard said. "Gave statements to your lawyers, went against me publicly. That took courage I didn't think he had." "He found his spine," I said. "Too late for our marriage, but not too late for his own integrity." "Will you ever forgive me?" Richard asked. I thought about that. Forgiveness was complicated. What he'd done had caused real damage, real pain. But holding on to anger was exhausting, and I'd built something beautiful from the ashes of what he'd destroyed. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "Ask me again in a few years. Right now, I'm focused on moving forward, not looking back." Richard nodded. "That's fair, more than fair." He pulled out an envelope. "I wanted to give you this." I opened it. A check for $10 million made out to Catalyst Strategies. "What is this?" I asked. "Investment," he said. "No strings, no board seat, no control, just capital to help you grow. You've built something remarkable, something better than what I built. I'd like to be a small part of that if you'll allow it." I stared at the check. $10 million would transform everything. We could expand faster, hire more people, take bigger risks. It was everything I'd need to take Catalyst to the next level. It was also Richard's money, and accepting it felt like accepting him back into my life in some way. "I need to think about it," I said. "Discuss it with my team. We make decisions collectively now." "Of course," he said. "Take all the time you need. The offer stands regardless." We finished our coffee, talked about neutral topics. The conversation became easier, almost normal. By the end, I could almost remember why I'd once liked this man, back before I understood who he really was. As we were leaving, Richard stopped me. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of you, what you've accomplished, the person you've become. I wish I'd told you that when you were family instead of after I'd driven you away." "Me too," I said. I took the check and Richard's offer back to the leadership team. We debated for hours. Some people thought accepting was selling out. Others saw it as poetic justice, using Richard's money to build something he could never control. Finally, we voted. The decision was to accept the investment with conditions. We'd use it for the mentorship program, expanding it to help hundreds of young people instead of just 15. Richard's money would go toward creating opportunities for people who reminded us of ourselves. People who were talented but lacked connections and privilege. Richard agreed immediately. No negotiations, no conditions, just a wire transfer and a brief email wishing us success. 3 months later, we launched the Catalyst Foundation. Fully funded, focused on creating pathways into business careers for underprivileged youth. We partnered with community colleges and state universities, created internship programs and scholarship funds. Jennifer ran it personally. And watching her work with these young people reminded me why we'd started this whole thing. Not for revenge, not to defeat Richard, but because we believed people deserved opportunities based on merit, not connections. Daniel and I finalized our divorce a year after the firing. It was amicable, as these things go. We'd both moved on emotionally long before the legal paperwork caught up. We had lunch occasionally, maintaining a friendly distance. He'd started working in nonprofit management, finally stepping out of his father's shadow. He seemed happier, more authentic. The divorce had freed him as much as it had freed me. "I'm dating someone," he told me at one of those lunches. "Her name is Sarah. She's a teacher. Makes almost nothing, doesn't care about society connections, calls me out when I'm being privileged and oblivious." "She sounds perfect for you," I said, smiling. "She is," he agreed. "She's nothing like what my parents would have chosen, which is exactly why she's right." "I'm happy for you, Daniel, truly." "Are you seeing anyone?" he asked. I thought about Marcus. We'd been dancing around something for months, neither of us wanting to complicate the business relationship. But there was definitely something there. "Maybe," I said. "It's complicated." "It always is," Daniel said. "But you deserve complicated in a good way. After everything, you deserve to be happy." 2 years after walking out of Ashford Enterprises with 21 colleagues behind me, Catalyst Strategies had grown to 93 employees across 3 offices. Annual revenue had hit $68 million. We'd been featured in Forbes, Fortune, and Harvard Business Review. I'd been invited to speak at conferences about ethical business practices and building values-driven companies. None of that mattered as much as the culture we'd created. Employees who felt valued, clients who felt served, a company built on integrity instead of intimidation. I was invited to speak at a business school, the same one I'd graduated from years earlier. Standing in front of those eager students, I told them the truth. "Success and revenge are not the same thing," I said. "When I started Catalyst Strategies, I thought I was building a company to prove someone wrong, to show the man who'd fired me that he'd made a mistake. And maybe that was true at first. But somewhere along the way, the motivation changed. I stopped building against something and started building for something, for the values I believed in, for the people who believed in me, for the possibility of creating something better. A student raised her hand. Do you regret how it happened? The firing, the public fight, all of it. I thought about that. I regret the pain it caused, the stress, the fear, the moments when I didn't know if we'd survive. But do I regret where I ended up? No. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the best thing. It just doesn't feel that way at the time. Getting fired was devastating. It also freed me to become who I was supposed to be. Another student asked, what would you say to young women facing similar situations, dealing with powerful people who try to suppress them? Document everything, I said immediately. Build your skills, know your worth, and understand that you don't need anyone's permission to be excellent. The people who try to diminish you are usually threatened by your potential. Don't make yourself smaller to make them comfortable. Build something so undeniable they have no choice but to recognize it. After the talk, students lined up to ask questions, share their stories, seek advice. I stayed for hours, energized by their passion and potential. This was legacy. Not quarterly earnings or market share, but inspiring the next generation to build better, more ethical, more humane businesses. On my way out, the dean stopped me. That was inspiring, she said. We'd love to have you back as a regular guest lecturer. I'd be honored, I said. Driving home that night, I thought about the woman I'd been 3 years ago, desperate for approval, trying to fit into a world that would never fully accept her, measuring her worth by someone else's standards. That woman was gone, not destroyed but transformed, tempered by fire into something stronger, clearer, more authentically herself. My phone rang. Marcus. Hey, I answered. What's up? Just calling to see how the speaking thing went, he said. It was good, really good. Those students are going to change the world. So did you, he said quietly. We did, I corrected. None of this happens without the team, without the 18 people who walked out with me and believed we could build something better. Speaking of the team, Marcus said, we're all going out for drinks to celebrate the quarterly numbers. You coming? I thought about the work waiting on my desk, the emails I should answer, the strategic plans I should review. Absolutely, I said. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Because that was the lesson I'd learned. Success wasn't just about the numbers, it was about the people, the relationships, the moments of celebration with the ones who'd fought beside you. The bar was crowded with Catalyst employees, past and present. People were laughing, telling stories, celebrating not just the quarterly results but everything we'd become. Jennifer was in the corner with 3 of her mentorship program graduates, beaming with pride. Patricia was debating strategy with David. The newer employees mixed with the originals, all part of the same culture we'd intentionally built. Marcus found me at the bar. You look happy, he said. I am happy, I realized. Genuinely, unexpectedly happy. Good, he said. You've earned it. We stood there together, watching our team celebrate. Our company, our creation. Do you ever think about what would have happened if Richard hadn't fired you? Marcus asked. Sometimes, I admitted. I probably would have stayed at Ashford, kept trying to earn respect that would never come. Slowly lost myself trying to fit into their world. In a weird way, firing me was the best thing Richard ever did for me. He meant to destroy me. Instead, he freed me. Revenge of the highest order, Marcus said with a smile. Succeeding so completely that you stop caring about revenge. Exactly, I said. Later that night, alone in my apartment, I opened my laptop. Not to work, but to write. I'd been documenting the journey, thinking maybe there was a book in it someday. A guide for others facing similar battles. I titled the document, What They Lost, What I Found. And I began to write. They say living well is the best revenge. That's partially true. But the real revenge is when you stop living for revenge and start living for purpose. When the person who tried to break you becomes irrelevant to your happiness. When you build something so meaningful that their opinion of you doesn't matter anymore. Richard Ashford fired me to protect his ego and maintain his control. In doing so, he lost a talented employee, damaged his company's reputation, and ultimately lost his own position. I lost a job, a marriage, and the illusion of security. But I gained autonomy, integrity, and the knowledge that I could survive anything. The 22 people who walked out with me that day made a choice. They chose principle over paycheck, integrity over security. They chose to bet on themselves and each other. Not all of them stayed for the entire journey, and that's okay. But those who did helped build something remarkable. We created a company where people matter more than profit, though we're profitable. Where integrity guides decisions, though we're pragmatic. Where everyone has a voice, though someone ultimately has to decide. Is it perfect? No, we make mistakes, we have conflicts, we face challenges. But we face them together, guided by values we chose rather than rules imposed on us. To anyone reading this who's been fired, betrayed, diminished, or dismissed, your story isn't over. The person who tried to end your chapter might have actually started your book. The worst moment might be the catalyst for your best transformation. But here's the important part. Transformation requires letting go. You can't build something new while clinging to old grievances. You can't move forward while constantly looking back. At some point, you have to choose between revenge and success, between anger and growth, between proving someone wrong and proving yourself right. I chose growth. I chose success. And in doing so, I got the best revenge possible. I became happy. Genuinely, deeply, sustainably happy. Not because I destroyed my enemy, but because I built something beautiful. Richard Ashford will always be part of my story, but he's not the main character anymore. I am, and that's the ultimate victory. I saved the document and closed my laptop. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chapters. But tonight, I was at peace. The journey from that luxury boardroom to this moment had been brutal, terrifying, and transformative. I'd lost a career, a marriage, and an identity I'd worked hard to build. But I'd gained something infinitely more valuable, myself. My authentic, uncompromising, undeniable self. Richard had tried to fire me into obscurity. Instead, he'd fired me into my destiny. And for that, despite everything, I was grateful. The real revenge wasn't destroying him. It was becoming someone so successful, so fulfilled, so completely myself that his opinion of me became irrelevant. It was building a life where the approval I'd once desperately sought from him didn't matter anymore because I'd learned to approve of myself. 22 people walked out with me that day. Together, we proved that talent, integrity, and hard work could triumph over power, money, and connections. We proved that you don't need a billionaire's resources to build something meaningful. You just need courage, competence, and people who believe in the same values. To everyone watching this, wherever you are in the world, whatever battle you're fighting, you're stronger than you know. The person trying to diminish you is revealing their own insecurity, not your inadequacy. And sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the universe clearing the path for your greatest achievement. Don't just survive your setbacks. Transform them, use them, let them forge you into someone unbreakable. Because the best revenge isn't destruction, it's creation. Building something so undeniably excellent that your critics become irrelevant. Living so fully that the opinions of small-minded people can't touch you. That's what I learned. That's what I built, and that's what I want you to remember. Success isn't about defeating your enemies. It's about outgrowing the need to have enemies at all. That's my story. From a luxury boardroom where I was fired to building an empire of my own. From devastating betrayal to unexpected triumph. From seeking approval to creating value. From victim to victor to something beyond both. Simply myself, living authentically, building meaningfully, succeeding completely. And if I can do it, so can you.